So much of this car is done by hand, from the engine to the interior, and in an industry racing towards electrified this and automated that, Aston Martin chose to double down on a philosophy that is essentially pre-industrial. The question isn't whether this matters to the EPA or your insurance company, it's whether you can actually feel the difference when you're behind the wheel. And after a whole lot of quality seat time behind this $300,000 contradiction, I have some thoughts. What's it like? Buckle up, my friends. Let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Makse, racer, lover of driving fast, fun things, and on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, the hand-built nature of this Vantage is one thing, but then we've got to talk about F1 tech, very, very trick dampers, and a roof mechanism that operates faster than most people can blink. Plus, for this particular tester, we need to talk about the roughly 6 figures worth of options and whether they make you a better driver. And before we get into what this is like to drive, let's have a look at it in a little more depth. As we look into this, the hand-built aspects of this Vantage Roadster are just the appetizer. For this latest generation Vantage, there are significant updates. It starts with a 29% increase in lateral chassis stiffness through strategic reinforcement. It's also worth mentioning that the Roadster was developed concurrently with the coupe, not as an afterthought. The hand-assembled Mercedes-AMG engine is up 155 horsepower for this new generation. Bilstein DTX adaptive dampers have a 500% increase in bandwidth over the previous generation dampers. And this roof, it's the world's fastest Z-fold mechanism, goes up and down in 6.8 seconds, up to 31 miles an hour. The F1 tech transfer comes via Aston Martin Performance Technologies simulation tools for chassis development and the implementation of the updated 6-axis internal measurement unit for advanced electronic stability control systems. That stiffer chassis uses Aston Martin's well-known aluminum construction. Much of the bodywork here is composites, and underneath that hood is that updated Mercedes-AMG 4-liter twin-turbo hot V V8. And keep in mind the M177 is a wet sump motor. It makes 656 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and 590 pounds of torque from 2,750 to 6,000 RPM. There is a multi-mode active exhaust. The transmission is still that 8-speed transaxle in the back. There's still that carbon fiber drive shaft inside the alloy torque tube. The electronically controlled limited slip diff has been updated. It'll go from open to locked in 135 milliseconds. There are 5 different drive modes with advanced traction control with 8 different settings. Steering's electrically assisted and it is variable assist. Suspension's based around double wishbones at the front, multi-link at the rear, and this has the latest gen Bilstein DTX adaptive dampers with a bespoke tune for this car, of course, and they're capable of 5,000 adjustments per second. Brakes are big 6-piston calipers at the front, 4-piston at the rear. This one has the optional carbon ceramics with 410mm rotors at the front and 360mm rotors at the back. Wheels and tires are 21s, and the Michelin Pilot Sport S5s are bespoke to this Vantage, 275 wide at the front, 325 at the rear. For 2026, this has Aston Martin's latest generation infotainment system. The optional Bowers & Wilkins system is tuned specifically for the Roadster. Curb weight is just shy of 4,000 pounds for the Roadster, which is about 130 pounds heavier than the coupe, which is remarkable. Still maintains a static weight distribution of 49% front, 51% rear, but on this channel we know it's not static weight distribution that counts, it's how you use it. Now, about that Formula One tech transfer, every company with a Formula One team talks about it like it's marketing pixie dust, but Aston Martin did something unique here. They used the same simulation tools that helped Fernando Alonso find 2/10 at Silverstone to develop this car's dynamics. Think about that. The same computational power analyzing tire slip angles at 200 miles an hour is now figuring out how to manage body roll in a Starbucks parking lot. The difference with this, however, is when you're enjoying your favorite canyon road and hit a bump mid-corner at 8/10, this responds with the same precision that keeps Aston Martin's F1 cars planted through Eau Rouge. Did you know that 80% of you are not subscribed? Yes, it's true. 80% of you are not subscribed. I checked the data. So if you like the content on this channel, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, make sure you like this. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Now back to your regularly scheduled episode. Okay. Yeah, this is something else. Apparently, this does 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds-ish, and that is just ridiculous. This is rear-wheel drive after all, but the engine, the transmission, the e-diff, and the tires do not struggle to put down all of that torque and all of that power to make this thing rocket in a straight line, let alone that, it rockets out of corners too. And for the matters of science, yes, we did use the launch control, and the interesting thing is you can hear the traction at the rear tires being managed. They just let out a little bit of a chirp as they're slipping, very subtle, because these Michelin pilots really don't make a lot of noise. It just is fantastic the way this car accelerates. Top speed, they say it's 202 miles an hour, which I don't doubt. What I do doubt, however, are the official horsepower and torque numbers. And I suspect if somebody puts this on an accurate dyno, they're going to find that it makes a lot more power than they say it does. Speaking of the e-diff, it's faster than ever before, going from fully locked to fully open and vice versa, which is the magic of a properly tuned e-diff, because it does wonderful things. For example, under braking, it goes to open, so it frees up the car, makes it feel much more planted. And then with inputs through various systems all throughout the car, it calculates the perfect amount of lock anytime you're asking for acceleration, whether that's in a straight line or picking up the throttle, exiting a corner. And I have to say, there's something definitely romantic about a nearly 700 horsepower engine being assembled by a single human being instead of robots. The 12 to 15 additional hours of assembly time translates to a power plant that doesn't just make power, it makes character. And when you're winding out this engine on a canyon road, you're experiencing one of the last gasps of automotive craftsmanship in an increasingly automated world. Remember turbo lag, that annoying little pause between asking for acceleration and the turbos actually spooling up? Well, that's not a thing. Those two turbos spool up faster than most people can blink, delivering power and torque curves that feel naturally aspirated, but with the efficiency of forced induction. You get the immediate response of a big displacement engine with the fuel economy of a smaller one, assuming your right foot shows any signs of restraint, which mine never does. The power delivery is so linear and immediate that you start to question whether the laws of physics apply to British sports cars, or if the engineers at Gaydon found a polite way of asking for an exemption. They've been using this 8-speed transaxle for a long time, and what I find here is that this is the best calibrated gearbox in a modern Aston. In normal driving like we're doing now, it shifts so smoothly that you barely notice it happening. Like a good butler, it anticipates your need without drawing attention to itself. But engage track mode, and it transforms into something that shifts with the violence of a thunderclap and the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. It's like artificial intelligence applied to gear selection, except instead of taking over the world, it's just trying to make you look like a better driver than you actually are. Upshifts are quick, downshifts are just as quick, and they're rev matched as well. And because there's so much torque here, you can just cruise along, never have to worry about shifting at all. But the best part of this experience is driving it in manual mode and then opening up that exhaust to maximum volume. And that creates just a glorious open air motoring experience. And fun fact, the exhaust is tuned to specific frequencies that supposedly trigger endorphin release, which makes this basically automotive therapy. There's so much detail in this car, especially this interior, that I'm sure I'm going to miss some of it, and for that I apologize. But with this interior, the devil is definitely in the details, because they must employ a lot of devils and Gaydon. A lot of the buttons and switches just feel substantial enough to use as paperweights, and the stitching inside this cockpit is perfectly aligned, and even the air vents operate with a precision that suggests someone actually cared about how they feel. And this interior is so gorgeous and so beautifully finished, including Aston Martin's beautifully machined hinges for their sun visors. It makes much of the competition's interiors look like they were assembled by teenagers, which they probably were. But here's what separates this from pure vanity. All of these details actually improve the experience. The steering wheel size and shape is done for control, not just for comfort. Love the shape and the size of the steering wheel. Encourages you to have your hands at 9 and 3. The shift paddles are easy to reach with your fingertips. Love this seat. Love the seating position. Nice and low on the floor. Lots of adjustment in the seat, as well as the steering column. So I'm seated perfectly here behind the wheel. Despite there being a lot of tech on board, especially given that this is a 2026 model, thankfully the approach here is analog first. The 10-inch touchscreen handles the complicated stuff, navigation, your phone, media, while all the important functions remain physical buttons and switches. This is tech that enhances the driving experience rather than replacing it, which in today's automotive landscape is about as rare as finding a manual transmission in a luxury car. The infotainment screen here could be a little bit brighter or a little bit more visible, given that we are in a Roadster and I drive this with the top down almost exclusively. It does become hard to see in some lighting conditions, that's for sure. Other than that, I appreciate the simplicity of the system. The UI is not that complex, and this does have enhanced Apple CarPlay. And fun fact, Apple CarPlay connected immediately and worked flawlessly until about the 1 hour mark, when it apparently decided we were then strangers for the rest of my test. Very British, actually. It's a Roadster, so you have 360 degrees of visibility. This does have cameras for parking assistance, and those are very helpful, given that this is fitted with the optional carbon exterior bits, and I really don't want to scratch those. Don't expect a lot of storage on board. There's a little bit of storage underneath the armrest. The wireless phone charger is here behind the console, and my phone stayed securely in that place even when the corners got interesting. The storage in the boot is surprisingly not that compromised. Right now, I have my full-size camera bag, a tripod, and my fully packed backpack. There's actually more available space in there than for just those things. When it comes to dynamics, this is the best Vantage I've ever driven. And I think that's for two reasons. Number one, this chassis is much stiffer than before, and those Bilstein DTX dampers seem to work like magic. These new dampers from Bilstein make 5,000 micro adjustments per second, which means they're constantly solving conflicts you didn't even know existed. High-frequency road surface irregularities gets absorbed, while body control during aggressive cornering remains uncompromised. The result is a car that rides like a luxury sedan on the highway and handles like a race car on canyon roads, which in automotive terms is kind of like discovering how to turn water into wine. Of course, I had to take this on my handling loop to really get a sense of chassis balance, and I have to say, it's impeccable. Balance is one of those things that's easier to recognize than to explain, much like pizza. But this Vantage has it in spades, the kind of inherent balance that makes every corner feel like a dance between the driver and machine, rather than a fight between physics and wishful thinking. The stiffer chassis means that your inputs translate to outcomes with precision, while the dampers ensure that each contact patch stays in touch with the road, and that eDiff manages power delivery to the road like a conductor managing an orchestra. It's neutral when you want it to be, playful when you ask it to be, and forgiving when you need it to be. And the best thing, this chassis balance doesn't impose its personality on you. It amplifies yours, which is the hallmark of a truly great sports car. And again, all credit to the stiffer chassis, but steering response in this 2026 is the best I've ever experienced in an Aston. The ratio is perfectly judged for both low-speed maneuverability and high-speed stability. And when you're threading this car through a series of corners, the steering translates your inputs with precision and zero delay. Even in 2026, there's still a lot of debate about carbon ceramic brakes and whether you actually need them, and that's fine until you actually need them, and then they become the most important thing ever invented. These things can haul this 3,900-pound missile down from triple-digit speeds with the confidence of a bouncer ejecting someone from a nightclub, firmly, decisively, and without negotiation. The pedal feel is perfectly linear and communicative. It is absolutely precise. You can modulate brake pressure with the confidence of a dimmer switch, which is crucial when you're carrying serious speed into a corner. And as a racer, confidence in the brake pedal transforms good drivers into great drivers and good drives into unforgettable experiences. The different drive modes in this car are more about optimizing this car's responsiveness and dynamics for a given driving experience. For example, there is a wet mode. There are multiple levels to traction control. All of these things you can use to improve your driving. If you're taking your car to the racetrack, well, you can optimize all of these settings to give you a little bit of a safety net, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but also provide you with a high quality feedback loop to let you understand what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. How do you spec yours? Well, with any Aston Martin, there are a lot of considerations, and I have some thoughts. For starters, you are looking at California Sage paint, which is part of Aston Martin's Provenance range, and it is singularly the most expensive option on this car. The interior is called All Centenary Saddle Tan, and it is semi-aniline leather, which is suited to the task of being in a roadster. More importantly, this Vantage Roadster is extremely well equipped. The base price in the US is $219,900, and in total, the options add up to about $90,000 for an as-tested price of $303,700 in the US. In Canada, base price is $259,700. In Canadian dollars, the options are $110,000 for a total as-tested of $370,100, and these prices are before freight, taxes, fees, etc. Aston Martin's options list is basically a psychology experiment disguised as a menu. Start with the base price, which is already firmly in the sold my kidney territory, then watch the extras pile on like toppings at a frozen yogurt shop operated by financial sadists. Carbon ceramic brakes, well, you need to stop safely. Provenance range paint, well, you can't have a cheap-looking expensive car. Bowers & Wilkins audio, well, of course you need that. And before you know it, you're at a little over $300,000 US or $370,000 Canadian, having spent 44% more than the base price on options that somehow all become essential. It's like going to a casino where the house always wins, except in this case, the house gives you a beautiful British sports car instead of just taking your money. And before you get all excited about ordering your Vantage Roadster, we dug deep into what owners are saying about their experiences with their Astons, which is much more revealing than we could do in any road test. First, lane keep assist. Number one, it seems hard-coded into this car's DNA, and every owner complains about it. Thankfully, Aston Martin has configured a simple system to turn that off. To be fair, it's not that intrusive, but I can appreciate wanting to switch that off, so they have created a very simple method to turn that off, but you do have to switch it off every single time you start your Vantage Roadster. The carbon ceramics, well, owners universally praise them for their performance and longevity. The Provenance paint, well, multiple owners have called it buyer's remorse territory, and sure, it may have an impact on resale value, but it is stunning in person and it is genuinely special. Cross shoppers consistently pick this over some Italian competitors for daily usability, but lose to some Germans on pure performance, but those might be a little bit dull. The deciding factor, One owner summed it up perfectly. When you've parked this and are walking away, you'll always look back at this Vantage. But would you look back at a Porsche? Nah, didn't think so. And that's the difference between the real ownership experience and marketing. My verdict? Well, the question I've been pondering is, does this hand-assembled philosophy make sense in an automated world? It's much like hiring a calligrapher in this era of emails. It's completely unnecessary, but sometimes absolutely essential. The engine doesn't just make power, it makes character. The throttle response has a liveliness that feels organic, not algorithmic, and the sound isn't just tuned for drama. When you're ringing it out on a back road, there's a sense that this power plant was built by someone who cared about how it would feel, not just how it would perform on a dyno. And that interior is absolutely gorgeous, and there's no question that it was put together by people with passion. And the thing is, in a world of increasing automation, that human touch becomes the luxury. This hand-built paradox isn't a contradiction, it's the point. And sometimes the old ways persist because they're still the best ways, even if they don't make perfect business sense. As much as I've enjoyed driving every previous Aston, this one is proof that perfection is expensive and worth every penny. And assuming you have that many pennies, it represents the convergence of British luxury sensibilities, German engineering precision, and Formula One tech transfer wrapped in a package that's beautiful enough to park in an art museum and capable enough to embarrass supercars on a racetrack. Yes, it costs more than a lot of houses. Yes, the option list reads like a ransom note written by luxury car enthusiasts. And yes, it's completely impractical for anything resembling normal life. But if you can afford it and appreciate the marriage of craftsmanship and tech, and you understand that sometimes the best things in life are also the most expensive, then this car will remind you why you worked so hard to afford it every single time you drive it. It's not just a car. It's a very exclusive way to remember what joy feels like. And this review has confirmed that I have excellent taste in cars and terrible judgment and financially responsible career choices. Thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this 2026 Aston Martin Vantage Roadster. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, you're not new, you know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this, and as always, sharing is caring, so please share this with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment below and get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including a very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even Aston Martin Vantages. And since you've hung around this long, well, here's something you might enjoy. It's the last Aston we looked at. That was the DB12 Volante, and I think you might enjoy that episode. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time.